The Baltimore Ravens are set to face off against the Pittsburgh Steelers in the wild card round. It's officially official. Ravens Steelers. We talk about all that and so much more coming up on this bonus edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into a bonus live edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, and we are, of course, here with you, as always, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here on this Sunday night, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, part of your night, your first listen of the day or of the night. We're free and available for you, all podcasting platforms. Of course, that is in video form on YouTube. You can hit that like and subscribe button. Also in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe over there as well. We're a 5-day-a-week Ravens podcast. So Monday through Friday, we have our weekly regularly scheduled programming. But then we go live after every Ravens game. We go live after big pieces of news like this and so much more. Today's bonus live edition of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download. You can go to Locked On and PrizePicks. You got prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. You can use the code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. One more time, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Steelers, gonna be a tough one. Wild card weekend, third time for both these teams facing each other this year. I know those games can get a little bit dicey. It was between the Chargers and the Steelers. Obviously, how this all worked out was the Steelers lost to the Bengals last night, and the Chargers were able to defeat the Raiders, though it looked a little dicey. If I'm being honest, the Chargers did not look very good in the first half of that game up until very late in the first half, but then they turned it on, and I'm pretty sure the Raiders just wanted to lose anyway. So that's kind of how that happened, but two teams in the Chargers and the Steelers going in kind of opposite directions, where the Chargers have, for the most part, looked very good. On the opposite side of that, the Steelers have lost 4 straight games and have looked pretty terrible. But as we've talked about here on the show, if you're an everydayer, it really is a whole new season in the playoffs. You can't feed too much into the regular season, especially when it's Ravens Steelers. And we already talk about that, right? You talk about, it doesn't matter if the Ravens are 15-0, Steelers are 15-0, Ravens are 0-15, Steelers. It doesn't matter. You throw everything out the window, and it is a full 60-minute game, and that will determine who moves on to the divisional round. Yeah, we got a live edition of the show. Laura, appreciate you tuning in. Lamont, appreciate you. This is live. We're doing live tonight because it's a bonus edition where we're going to instantly react to it, all of us here live. It's going to be interesting. So, again, if you are in the chat with us, first of all, I've been doing this on all the lives. Tell me where you're tuning in from. I want to get a grand scope of all of our community here in video form as well as in audio form. Be sure you message me on social media. Tell me where you're from, where you're tuning in from, because we have people tuning in all over the U.S. and also all over the world. So it's incredible to see this community grow. And, man, it's going to be exciting. I mean, look, I know that there are some nerves about this because there's the uncertainty of the Steelers, and we'll get into that. But I feel like either way, if it was the Chargers or the Steelers, I'm okay either way. I feel confident in Baltimore either way. So we'll talk about how the Steelers match up with the Ravens. We'll get into some Ravens updates as well. And look at this. We have so many. Look, Arizona, Dallas, Port Charlotte, Wisconsin. Of course, we got the Baltimore, Tampa, Baltimore County, Northern Virginia. We got Sunrise. We got Des Moines, Canada, Toronto, Delaware, Los Angeles. Look at this. Everybody, the community on Locked On Ravens, we are strong here, video form, audio form. But let's talk about initial reactions to this matchup. So in the chat, tell me how you're feeling about the Pittsburgh matchup. I'll give you my reactions. If you're not with us live, you're either in the comments on YouTube or in audio form. Tell me how you're feeling as well. I feel okay about it. Now, we did a bonus episode for today. We talked about the pros and cons of both sides of it. So we talked about pros for the Steelers, pros for the Chargers, cons for the Steelers, cons for the Chargers. My overall verdict was that I would have preferred Los Angeles just because there's a little less unpredictability. And if we remember the first time the Ravens and Chargers matched up, there was no Roquan Smith and no Michael Pierce in that game. And that's why the Chargers were able to have some early success on the ground, in my opinion, with J.K. Dobbins. Now, in terms of quarterbacks, you would rather have Justin Herbert than Russell Wilson in terms of what you would rather have your team have. So obviously for the Ravens, you'd much rather face Russell Wilson. I think that for us, he's a very mistake-prone player. We saw that against the Bengals late. We saw it against the Ravens twice in the 2 times that the Ravens and Steelers have matched up. Playoffs come down to a bunch of little things. And I think one of the big areas that the Ravens have to win here is the turnover battle, because we saw the flip side of both of that. Well, I guess both scenarios, right? Where in the first game, the Steelers were the ones that got the big turnovers, got those momentum changing plays. And then on the flip side, when the Steelers came to Baltimore, it was the Ravens that was having the fumble luck. They were getting the big turnovers. And obviously each team that got the turnover luck and were able to force the most amount of turnovers won the game. So with Russell Wilson, I think you can make him make a mistake or two that could turn the tides of the game. Now, obviously, Russ is the more experienced playoff quarterback. He's won a Super Bowl. He has been in big moments. I think that area of it is advantage Pittsburgh. But Russ is not the same player that he was in Seattle. And I like this comment right here. The defense is building momentum. I think we will win the turnover battle. I agree. I think the Ravens will win the turnover battle here. But it's just a matter of them not moving away from who they are. Because in the first game, Derrick Henry had that fumble early, and the Ravens really didn't get back into their full groove right after it. Whereas in the second game, we saw the Ravens go all out. Derrick Henry was balling, Lamar was balling. And I do want to talk about this for a second. Pittsburgh did not have a lot of key players in that game that the Ravens and Steelers played a couple of weeks ago. And so we have to factor that in. There was no George Pickens, no Dante Jackson, Joey Porter Jr. left the game early, no Deshaun Elliott. There were some guys that were missing. TJ Watt was coming off that ankle injury. So I think that's a factor. And I think the other thing is Zay Flowers, if he does miss this game, we talked about this on the show we did this morning. So if you haven't checked that out, we go into a lot of detail, and we're going to do that again today. We talked about a lot of this where the Steelers, it's strength on strength, because obviously the Ravens are the best run team in the NFL. But at the end of the day, it's a big conversation because Pittsburgh has the 6th best rushing defense in the league. Whereas their pass defense has not been as good. They are 19th in the league in terms of net yards per attempt. And if you're new, if you don't know how I calculate stuff, I go off of net yards per attempt instead of total yards for rankings, because obviously if you run the ball more than any other team, you're going to have the most total running yards. Or if you pass the ball more, you're going to have the most total passing yards. It's how do you do in those opportunities. That's, to me, what classifies are you good or not. So you can run the ball a lot. It doesn't mean you're good if you're averaging 2 yards a carry on those 500 attempts. So Baltimore's the best run offense in the league. Pittsburgh is a top 6 run defense. But it's going to be, I think, an interesting conversation because I just don't know the unpredictability that's going to happen, because we know that Ravens-Steelers games already have that. But the physicality also is going to be off the charts. We know these AFC North battles are just super, super physical. And both these defenses have physical players. I'm not expecting a uber high-scoring game here. Like maybe a low 20s game. Now, if the Ravens offense gets rolling and there's a momentum play, we could see a blowout type of situation. But my initial prediction is that I don't necessarily see this being a super high-scoring game, even though the Ravens offense is hitting on all cylinders. And I think part of that also has to do with the potential of Zay not being there. And I see we got Junior Joe here. Big Kev, I think we got this, but it's going to be closer than our next game at Buffalo. I agree with this point, Joe. I think that Baltimore matches up with Buffalo a lot better than they do with Pittsburgh, but that doesn't mean I think Baltimore matches up poorly with Pittsburgh. I just think that when you look at part of what the Steelers do on the offensive side of the ball, the Steelers haven't necessarily thrown a ton of interceptions. I mean, they've only had 6 interceptions, and their passing offense, it's been kind of skewed because Justin Fields has taken some of the burden off of Russ, and Russ didn't start, obviously, for some games here. But the big thing is that the Steelers have the best turnover defense in the NFL. They had 33 turnovers this year. They're the 7th best scoring defense in the league this year, 12th best defense in terms of giving up yards. So this is a very solid Pittsburgh unit, but the weakness is the pass defense. The weakness is the pass defense. So it's going to be on if Zay can't play. Rashod Bateman having a huge game. Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews stepping up. But then can guys like Tylan Wallace, maybe Tez Walker, Nelson Aguilar, can those guys step up? Maybe they get Derrick Henry in the running game involved more in the passing game. And Rick, not any new updates on Zay. I might have something for tomorrow morning show, potentially, where Ian Rappaport's talking about it. And, we'll talk about that on tomorrow's show too. But I think the latest I've seen at least is knee sprain, possibly going to miss wild card, but maybe back for the divisional. But apparently there's new information. We'll end up seeing what ends up happening there. I really hope it's Sunday. Me too. But I just have a feeling it's going to be Saturday because both these teams played on Saturday. I think it'll probably be the Saturday night game. Now, the extra day of rest would really help both teams. And I think that the Ravens and Steelers both have deserved it based off of them having to play 3 games in 11 days recently. But I think the way the schedule is going to play out, and we'll probably hear on that tonight at some point once the Lions and Vikings game is over. So my prediction is that it's going to be Saturday, and that will be the conversation. But who knows? And again, I'm trying to peruse through Twitter to see if I'm missing anything as the playoffs and maybe that schedule comes out. So we're going to see. But at the end of the day, this team has an opportunity to beat the best to be the best, because this to me is the hardest path the Ravens could have in the AFC. Now, I think it's an open path, but Steelers, your most heated division rival. Bills, assuming the Bills win, and the Ravens win, obviously. So Ravens, Bills. Bills are a good team. I think they match up well with Buffalo, but they're still a good team. And then you have the Chiefs. That's the team that you've had circled on that calendar since before the season. After that week 1 heartbreaker, that's the team you have to beat to get to where you want to go. And that game would obviously be in Arrowhead. So that would be it would be accomplishing. I talked about this on this morning's episode, the bonus episode we did this morning. It almost would feel like a 2012-2013 run where they had to go beat the Andrew Luck Colts, who were good. That was a great rookie year from Andrew Luck. Then they had to go on the road and beat Peyton Manning's Broncos. That was going to be a tough matchup regardless. Then you had to go to Foxborough and beat Tom Brady's Patriots. And then you have to be the whole Harbaugh storyline in the Super Bowl with San Francisco. We're going to see. We're going to see. But at the end of the day, the thing that I think maybe worries me a little bit about this game, if there is something, is we saw some concerning trends against the Browns. Not a ton, but a couple. I'm curious to see what the Ravens do with Brandon Stephens. I think Brandon Stephens is a really intriguing, I don't know if I want to call it a sticking point or anything, but he's someone that maybe the Steelers want to get matched up on George Pickens. And Pickens, by the way, had a horrible game against Cincinnati. But him being back in the fold alongside Calvin Austin, it's big because without him, the offense is not good at all. And you look at the rushing offense for Pittsburgh, they're not a good rushing team. They're 26th in the league in yards per attempt. So I feel like if the Ravens can neutralize the Steelers' run game early, force them to be one-dimensional offense, because you also have to factor in Pat Freiermuth, who had a great game outside of that drop late in the game against Cincinnati. The Steelers have guys, and Jaylen Warren, I think, has been the one that has gotten the best of Baltimore more often. But I'm just not confident in Russ. That's the thing. Like, I don't believe in Russ. Maybe he eats his danger witches and does his high knees on the plane to Baltimore and proves me wrong, and that certainly could happen. I'm not shying away from that. But I don't know, Russ and the way the Steelers have looked, there's a lot of drama. There's a lot of drama here where the Steelers have not looked good the past 4 weeks. The Steelers have had internal drama with guys like Patrick Queen calling out the defense, Cam Hayward, George Pickens. Like, things are not good in Pittsburgh right now, and sometimes that can be demoralizing. So we'll see what ends up happening. And yeah, I'm him or we out if we lose to the Steelers. Yeah, playoffs, one and done. If you lose, you're done. There's no do-overs. So, you got the MLB, NHL, NBA, you got games. best of 7, best of 5s. You're one and done with football. You're done. So they have to take advantage. This is where it starts, and Baltimore has an opportunity to go on a special run, but they cannot get in their own way, and they cannot allow the Steelers to beat them because much like we said, you can't allow the Steelers to come into your home stadium and beat you for that AFC North crown. Well, now the stakes are even higher. You can't allow the Steelers to come into your home stadium and beat you to move on in the playoffs and send you home. So big storylines coming up on Locked On Ravens here live. We're going to be diving into more. We'll talk about some of the roles that the stars on the Ravens might play. We'll talk about John Harbaugh and the coaching staff and a lot more. So be sure to stay tuned. We have a lot to dive into on this live edition of Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action. That's where PrizePicks comes in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games, PrizePicks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With PrizePicks, it's simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns, and for shots 1 to 1,000 times your money, you can make your picks in less than 60 seconds. And whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or want to cash out quickly, PrizePicks has got you covered. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear that people are loving this platform. I've been playing for a while now, and I'm having a blast this week. I Jared Goff, obviously playing on Sunday night for more than 230 passing yards, and Derrick Henry for more than 1 total touchdown. That worked out for me with that Baltimore-Cleveland game. It's so easy to use, and I love how fast the payouts are. I've gotten paid out as little as 15 minutes when my picks hit, plus weekly promos like Taco Tuesday discounts and even more, and they add even more value to my lineups. So here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Download the app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Back here on Locked On Ravens Live, Kevin Oestreicher doing a little bonus episode Sunday night, Sunday evening. It is official. Baltimore Ravens facing off against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And honestly, these are the storylines the NFL wanted. They didn't get their storyline in Joe Burrow versus Josh Allen. It's going to be the Broncos heading into the playoffs. The Chiefs just got destroyed, dismantled by Denver. So the official AFC playoff picture, the Chiefs have the bye in the 1 seed. Bills are 2, Ravens 3, Texans 4, Chargers 5, Steelers 6, and Broncos 7. So obviously sets up a big Ravens and Steelers wild card matchup. We'll have so much coverage for you this week on Locked On Ravens and throughout the entire postseason. We're going to start upgrading a little bit here on the show. We've hit a lot of great milestones, 10,000 on YouTube, audio forms growing every day, bunch of great videos, and we're starting our upgrades tomorrow, and they will continue to come out over the course of the postseason and the beginning of the offseason. So we bring you daily Ravens coverage, and I really try to do my best each and every day, bringing you all the coverage you need to keep up to date on this Baltimore Ravens team. We have fun here too on Locked On Ravens. I'm getting a little Dixie Cup outfit for my 10,000 subs. Been weird shipping. I don't think it's coming from within the U.S., so it's been really hard to track this thing down, but it's coming eventually. We're going to have it down here on Locked On Ravens. I'm curious. Let's do a little exercise to start this off. On a confidence scale level of 1 to 10, 1 being you are not confident, 10 being you are very confident. Scale of 1 to 10, how good are you feeling about the Ravens' chances of beating the Steelers in Wild Card Weekend? 1 to 10. So in the live chat, put it. In the comments, put it. And if you're an audio listener, be sure to message me and we can talk about it. My 1 to 10 scale, I'm feeling decently good about this one. I'm going to give it like a 7. I'm going to say 7. I mean, I feel like Baltimore, they have a lot of good opportunity here, especially because if it becomes some like offensive thing where the Ravens are able to just dismantle the Steelers defense and get off to a really strong start, I don't think that Pittsburgh has the offensive firepower to keep up with them. Like, I think that Buffalo does. I think that Kansas City does, where if it becomes an offensive shootout type deal, you can argue that, yeah, Buffalo could keep up with the Ravens and Kansas City could keep up with the Ravens. We know Cincinnati could. They did it, and the Ravens had to come back in those games. But I don't think Pittsburgh has the offensive firepower to do that. I just don't. Now, as I said at the beginning of the show, I don't think that this is going to be a huge deal with like 30 points from both sides. Playoff games get weird. AFC North games get weird. But I agree with you, Cam. Turnovers and penalties will decide this game. And The Ravens obviously had some bad penalties in the Cleveland game. They've had bad penalties all year. There have been moments for them over these last couple of weeks of good games with not a lot of penalties. But it will come down to that, because at the end of the day, there aren't many teams that can beat the Ravens if they play their game, if they're on their A game. In fact, if they play the way that they've been playing over the last 4 weeks, I'm not sure there is a team that can beat the Ravens. But if they have these self-inflicted mistakes, turnovers, penalties, whatever it may be, and keeps a team in it or lets them get out to an advantage, that could be the problem. So it's interesting. And we can talk about this a little bit too. This comment here. So 9 out of 10, the 10% worry is for TJ Watt. He can wreck the game. He's also winless in his 3 previous playoff games. He'll be ready. Pittsburgh has not won a playoff game in forever. I don't know the official year that the last time Pittsburgh, was it 2015? Was it the Ravens game in 2015? I can't remember when it was, but it's been a long time since the Steelers have won a playoff game. And I'm sure that entire organization is chomping at the bit here to go out there and get a win, especially against a division rival who has had, some, not a lot, but some playoff success over the last handful of seasons. Obviously, I think the big storyline is that the Ravens have not been back to the Super Bowl since 2012, 2013. And they haven't, the AFC Championship game was great last season, but that's not the goal. So then it begs the conversation, and I've seen it a lot in the comments, so we can have the conversation just a tad right now. We're not going to get too into it because I don't think there's a ton of point in just going on and on about this. But if you've listened to me every day on Locked On Ravens, I've been consistent, especially over the last couple of years on this topic. I am a big proponent of growth. And what that means is playoff success and playoff growth, team growth, player growth, whatever it may be. The Ravens took a step last season by making it back to the AFC Championship game. Regardless of where you stood on John Harbaugh, whether you wanted him to be fired or whether you wanted him to continue on with the team, the Ravens were never going to make that decision because that was a step in the right direction. Now, if the Ravens lose this game to Pittsburgh, a big conversation will happen about John Harbaugh. And we will certainly have that conversation here on the show. Hopefully we don't have to have the conversation. Hopefully the Ravens can go on a deep playoff run and win the Super Bowl. But that conversation would happen if John Harbaugh and the Ravens lose in the wild card round. And I see Zane talking about this right here. The Ravens need to show up in the playoffs and prove it. That's exactly what it is. Because I made this point on the bonus episode we did today. The 2023 regular season was one of the most fun regular seasons that the Ravens have had in their history. They were so dominant, but we don't talk about it at all. And why don't we talk about it? It's because the playoffs were so disappointing and they were able to beat the Houston Texans. But when it came to the Chiefs, they laid an egg. And that's the heartbreak. You can have the best regular season possible, like the Ravens essentially almost did last year. But if you don't get it done in the playoffs and achieve your goals, then it doesn't mean anything here. And you have an opportunity to go on a really special playoff run. And it's an opportunity for them to be able to go out and I think prove a lot of people wrong, which, is great. And Justin, I see you can't super chat. Don't see the option. We don't have super chats enabled here on Locked On Ravens. If you want to support the channel, tell a friend, tell a family member, like the video, hit subscribe, anything there. We just don't have super chats, but I'd love to engage with the chat here. And I appreciate you, Justin, for tuning in. But yeah, I feel like, and Fran, appreciate you. Like the video. It means a lot. Gets us in the algorithm too, gets our communities growing for more Ravens fans to find the video and engage in the conversation, engage in the comments. And Joe, welcome in to the show. Did a little impromptu live, 1000%. But I just feel like Baltimore, either way, if it was Los Angeles or if it was Pittsburgh, I felt good either way, especially because here's the other thing. Adrian pointed out here, the Ravens are at home. The Ravens have a home playoff game. And I know that some people wanted the Ravens to lose, go on the road, play the Texans. I feel like they would have crushed in that game, if we're being honest. But I feel like the home atmosphere of Baltimore, M&T Bank. Now, I think the other thing, and this is kind of would it determine the winner or loser? No, but I think is an interesting thing to think about, is the fact that the Chargers would have had to fly cross country and play in the super cold weather. These guys know how to, these guys have played at colleges that were cold, or, they've played in cold weather. It's not like they are not accustomed to it, but it is a little different, when you are a home cold December playoff team versus when you are in LA or one of those domes or whatever. And it's a different shift. So again, it's not the be all end all. Like, obviously Pittsburgh is a team that knows how to play in the cold. I've seen that in the chat, and I've seen it even on social media. So I guess that would be advantage Pittsburgh, but I feel like Baltimore has a couple more advantages over the Steelers as well, which we're going to get into in the final part of the show. So we'll talk about some updates for the Ravens. I see a lot about Calais Campbell in the chat. We'll talk about him and Odell a little bit, and a lot more on this live instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. Don't go anywhere. We still have a ton to talk about. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's thrilling. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make everyone more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Locked On Ravens live bonus Sunday. Kevin Oestreicher, everybody in the chat, everybody in the comments, everybody in audio form. We are all here talking about the Ravens and the Steelers. It'll be wild card weekend extravaganza for Baltimore. Still no time at the time of this recording, but I'm sure by the time our 6 a.m. episode comes out tomorrow morning, we will know the time and the day of this one. Really exciting. And if you're new to the channel, hit that like and subscribe button. It will mean the world to me on YouTube, and also in audio form. It would mean the world if you subscribed over there as well. It's the same show, both in audio and video. So if you're driving to work one day and want to listen in audio form, don't watch and drive, please. Listen and drive, and watch and relax is my whole thing. So we've built up such great communities here on Locked On Ravens. We're only going to continue. And yeah, Junior Joe says it right here. Locked On Ravens Live, Big Kevin Special, Sunday edition, big extravaganza. We're throwing out all the words because I'm excited for this. I know like I feel excited. I feel nervous. I feel amped up. I feel like jittery a little bit. It's going to be an exciting time. Now, that excitement goes away if the Ravens lose this game. But as I talk about, I feel like there are a couple of other advantages that the Ravens do have over the Steelers in ways that they can exploit Pittsburgh. Now, the big thing is that Pittsburgh is a terrible, terrible red zone offense. The time of this recording, not all the stats have updated yet, so we'll get into the updated stats as the week goes on. But week 17 minimum through 17 weeks, the Steelers, they are the second worst red zone offense in the entire NFL. They cannot, and we saw this firsthand. The Steelers, that first game they had to win with 6 Chris Boswell field goals. Like, they couldn't punch the ball in the end zone from the red zone. So they've relied on Chris Boswell, who's had a phenomenal year, right? Chris Boswell's been great. But if you can limit the Steelers in the red zone, it'll give you an opportunity. Because this Ravens defense, it's been bend, don't break. That's been kind of the MO and the mantra of this Ravens group so far this season. They'll give up some stuff in the middle of the field. They'll have some penalties. But more often than not, they hold teams to 3 instead of 7. And that's a 4-point swing. And in the playoffs, every single point matters. And just for context, the Ravens, they are the 10th best red zone defense in the league this year. And they are the top red zone offense. So they are able to take advantage of their opportunities there. The Steelers are not. Baltimore is also the second best 4th down defense in the league. The thing that I would like to see improve a little bit is the 3rd down defense. It seems like at times Baltimore can't get off the field on 3rd down. That's been an issue for them. And for the Steelers, if you just want to compare where they are 3rd down wise, they're like middle of the pack. They're 14th. So it's kind of like middling strength on middling strength. So we're going to see. And Ravens 76 be more. Great point here. Hopefully Justice will be back this week. That's a huge get. Justice is one of the most important underrated players on that offense. And I think that they need to scheme up some more stuff for Keaton Mitchell as well. But at the end of the day, Baltimore is a very talented team and Pittsburgh is a very talented team, but it's 2 teams that they know each other. I think that's the uncertain factor. Like, Tomlin and Harbaugh have been going up against each other for decades at this point, like almost 2 decades. And there's so much familiarity. Lamar has been facing off against the Steelers, and he hasn't played in a ton of those games, I get, but this will be Lamar's second full-time game. So Lamar barely played at M&T Bank Stadium against the Steelers, and now he's going to have 2 games at M&T in front of full fans in like 2 weeks. Or not 2 weeks, like a month. So it's going to be a good game. I think the other part is that the Steelers don't really convert on 4th down, and they're bad at holding teams on 4th down. They're 29th in offense, 28th in defense on 4th down. I'm curious to see how aggressive John Harbaugh gets in some of these 4th down situations. You can't get cute with it. Cannot get cute with it, right? I feel like you need to be able to just play to your strength here. 4th and short, run that thing with Derrick Henry. Just pound it right up the middle, please. That's all people are asking for. That is what it is. You just got to stay true to your game, because far too many times in the postseason, we've seen the Ravens get away from who they are. They'll get punched and they'll kind of cower. They have to be the ones that punch first, and they have to keep attacking, right? And this is also a thing, right? Win the game. Lamar needs to go out and just play ball, not overthink it. You need to be able to beat everyone. You can't avoid the competition. And the Ravens don't want it any other way, right? Don't want it any other way. Nick Morris said at the Ravens long snapper, I do some work at the Ryan Ripken show, and he comes on almost every week, and we talk about it, where the Ravens aren't shying away from anybody. They want a tough path. He said, even last night, that you don't want to get like some beat up team. As a competitor, you want to go out there and beat these guys. And I agree with this primetime read option with Lamar, Derrick Henry. Defenses, and we saw at Pittsburgh, they were the ones that really were trying to stop Lamar's threat with the legs. They were saying, we're not going to let Lamar beat us with his legs. We're going to send a guy there, and if Derrick Henry beats us, Derrick Henry beats us. And guess what? Derrick Henry kind of beat them in that game. So it's the Lamar effect, and that's such a big factor here, because at times the Ravens haven't used that in the postseason to their advantage, and it has hurt them. It's really, really hurt them. And while does love, if the Ravens learned anything from last season, it's to stay true, and do what they do best. That it is what it is. So I think there'd be massive disappointment if the Ravens don't win this game. I just think because the Steelers have looked so bad recently, and there's all this drama. These games are so unpredictable, though, that you don't know. You don't know. So I just figure out, with this Baltimore team, I feel like Lamar is even going to have a chip on his shoulder. And not even like for the Steelers. Like, obviously it's division and you want to win those games. But, I mean, look, the Ravens know what they want to do. And I see this all over the place. And I agree with it. And any season that you don't win the Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson is a year of your prime that you are wasting. The goal is not to make the AFC Championship game. The goal is not to make the Super Bowl. The goal is to win the Super Bowl. The goal is to win the Super Bowl. Because again, like for Joe, let's bring Joe Burrow into the conversation real quick. They made it to the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Nobody remembers Joe Burrow made the Super Bowl. I know the Bengals, what they get? They got like AFC Championship rings or something. Like they got those made or whatever. You don't get remembered for making the Super Bowl. You get remembered for winning it. And this is the first step. It's a 4-step process to get to where you want to go. There's a lot of tough competition in front of you. And it starts off with your most historic, hated division rival. You can't draw up a better storyline than that. And I feel pretty decently confident that the Ravens will win this game. I'm not saying, let's look to Buffalo. You can't overlook Pittsburgh. If you do that, you lose. But I feel decently confident the Ravens will be able to take care of business and do their thing. So this was really fun. I enjoyed doing this live. And if the Ravens advance, we'll see what ends up happening. And we'll maybe do another one of these for if the Ravens play the Bills or whoever it would be, Texans, Chargers, whatever in the divisional round. Hopefully they get that far. But, of course, we'll be back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens, regularly 6 a.m. scheduled programming. We'll be talking about Lamar and the MVP conversation. If you didn't know, Lamar's in the MVP race. I know it's just been a small storyline this year. And we'll also be talking Ravens Steelers. We'll be talking Zay Flowers. We'll be talking advantages, disadvantages. So I appreciate everybody for being here and tuning into the live. If you're here in the comments after the fact, on YouTube. Appreciate you as well. And all the audio listeners, you know, I appreciate everybody who listens in audio form as well. On the way out, hit that like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along and subscribe in audio form. Tell a friend and tell a family member we have them and you covered for 5 days a week of daily Ravens coverage. And Cam, I appreciate this. Joe, you know what we got going on at Kevin and Zach React. Rick, appreciate you as well as always. So again, coming up tomorrow, don't miss it. 6 a.m. live. Well, we won't be live. I want to go live, but 6 a.m. is a little early for that. Well, it'll be a premiere. We always premiere our episodes at 6 a.m. because I'm not up for that, let's be honest. So we'll talk about all the stuff we mentioned, Zay Flowers, Ravens, Steelers, Lamar, MVP. Stay tuned for that, and I'll see you right back here really in just less than 12 hours. Look at that, less than 12 hours on Locked On Ravens. So again, I appreciate everybody. Have a good rest of your night. I'll see you back here soon.